Ever wondered which royal secrets led to tragic ends? Which monarchs met their fate through scandal rather than natural causes? The glittering world of royalty often hides dark secrets beneath the crown. Number 10. The mysterious death of King Ludwig II of Bavaria. Was Bavaria's mad king truly insane or simply inconvenient? In 1886, King Ludwig II of Bavaria was found dead in waist-deep water in Lake Starnberg, just hours after being declared mentally unfit to rule. The 40-year-old king had been dethroned by his government and removed to Berg Castle. The official story claimed he drowned himself, but the autopsy revealed no water in his lungs. Even more suspiciously, his doctor who had accompanied him on a walk near the lake was also found dead. Ludwig had spent his reign building fantastical castles that nearly bankrupted the Bavarian treasury. His eccentric behavior, from eating dinner with imaginary guests to demanding private opera performances, led ministers to declare him insane. Some historians believe Ludwig was murdered to prevent him from overturning the medical ruling that removed him from power. No water in the lungs, unexplained bruises on his neck and shoulders, and the death of the only witness all point to something more sinister than suicide. Today, ironically, Ludwig's wasteful castle-building project, including the famous Neuschwanstein Castle, brings millions in tourism revenue to Bavaria annually. Number 9. Princess Charlotte's childbirth tragedy. Could a different doctor have saved Britain from decades of Victoria? In 1817, Princess Charlotte Augusta of Wales, the only legitimate grandchild of King George III and heir to the British throne, died after giving birth to a stillborn son. Charlotte, just 21 years old, had endured a difficult 50-hour labor. Her death transformed British history, triggering a succession crisis that eventually led to Queen Victoria's reign. Charlotte had been incredibly popular with the British public, who adored her warm personality and independent spirit, a stark contrast to her unpopular father, the Prince Regent, later King George IV. Her physician, Sir Richard Croft, was so distraught over his failure to save the princess that he shot himself 3 months later. Many medical historians believe Charlotte's death was preventable. Croft had refused to use forceps during the difficult delivery, which might have saved both mother and child. After Charlotte's death, her father's unmarried brothers scrambled to find wives and produce heirs, leading to the birth of Victoria. The public mourning for Charlotte was unprecedented, with shops closing for 2 weeks and people wearing mourning clothes for months. The tragedy changed obstetric practices in Britain, highlighting the dangers of the then common approach of minimal intervention during childbirth. Number 8. The Shah of Iran's cancer cover-up. How does a powerful ruler hide terminal illness while a revolution brews? Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran, concealed his lymphoma diagnosis for years as his country spiraled toward revolution. Diagnosed in 1974, the Shah kept his condition secret from nearly everyone, including close advisors and even the United States government, which had long supported his regime. As his health deteriorated, so did his grip on power. The Shah received covert treatment in Switzerland and other countries under fake names, while publicly appearing increasingly frail and making erratic decisions. By 1978, when anti-monarchy protests intensified, the Shah was taking powerful painkillers and chemotherapy drugs that affected his mental clarity during Iran's most critical political crisis. In January 1979, he fled Iran as the Islamic Revolution succeeded, taking with him a small medical team. He bounced between countries seeking refuge and treatment, with many nations reluctant to accept him for fear of angering the new Iranian regime. The U.S. eventually allowed him entry for medical treatment, which triggered the hostage crisis at the American embassy in Tehran. The Shah died in exile in Egypt in 1980, just 18 months after leaving the country he had ruled for 37 years. Some historians believe that had the Shah been healthy, he might have responded more effectively to the revolutionary movement, possibly altering the course of modern Middle Eastern history. Number 7. The poisoning of Tsar Alexander II's heir. Could Russia's history have been different if Nicholas had taken the throne instead of Alexander III? Cesarevich Nicholas Alexandrovich, the heir to the Russian throne, died under mysterious circumstances in 1865 at just 21 years old. The official cause was meningitis, but persistent rumors suggested poisoning. Nicholas was engaged to Princess Dagmar of Denmark and represented the liberal hope for Russia's future. Unlike his more reactionary brother Alexander, who would become Tsar Alexander III, Nicholas advocated for democratic reforms and the modernization of Russia. His death in Nice, France, where he had gone to recover from what was initially described as a minor illness, shocked the Russian imperial family. His brother Alexander not only succeeded him as heir but also married Nicholas's fiancée, Princess Dagmar, who took the name Maria Fedorovna. The circumstances surrounding Nicholas's rapid decline fueled conspiracy theories. Some claimed he was poisoned by conservatives fearful of his liberal tendencies, while others suggested foreign powers seeking to destabilize Russia were responsible. What is known is that his death profoundly altered Russia's trajectory. The reactionary Alexander III reversed many of his father's reforms, creating conditions that would eventually lead to revolution. Nicholas's death represents one of history's great what-ifs. Had he lived to become Tsar instead of his conservative brother, Russia might have evolved toward constitutional monarchy rather than revolution. Number 6. The Fatal Duel of Sweden's King Gustav III. Was an opera masquerade the perfect cover for regicide. In March 1792, Sweden's King Gustav III attended a masked ball at the Royal Opera House in Stockholm, where he was shot by a conspirator despite having been warned about an assassination plot. The king, easily identified despite his mask, was approached by several men in black masks who surrounded him, one of whom shot him in the back. Gustav lingered for 13 days before dying of his wounds. The assassination stemmed from nobility's resentment of Gustav's reforms, which had reduced aristocratic privileges and strengthened royal power. The king's dramatic murder at a masked ball later inspired Giuseppe Verdi's opera Un ballo in Maschera. The assassin, Jacob Johan Ankarström, was captured and executed by beheading, while his co-conspirators received various punishments. Gustav's murder had profound political implications, as his heir, Gustav IV Adolf, was only 13 years old. The Regency government that followed undid many of Gustav III's enlightened policies. In a bizarre footnote to history, the bullet that killed the king and Ankarström's mask were preserved and are still displayed in Swedish museums. The assassination came at a volatile time in European history, just 3 years after the French Revolution, and represented one of the first modern political murders of a head of state. Number 5. Crown Prince Rudolf of Austria's Mayerling incident. Suicide pact or political murder at the hunting lodge. In January 1889, Crown Prince Rudolf of Austria-Hungary, the only son and heir of Emperor Franz Joseph, was found dead at his hunting lodge in Mayerling alongside his teenage mistress, Baroness Mary Wetzera. The official explanation declared Rudolf had committed suicide in a lover's pact with Mary, but many aspects of the incident remain suspicious. Rudolf, 30 years old and unhappily married to Princess Stephanie of Belgium, had increasingly clashed with his conservative father over politics. The liberal-minded crown prince had even reportedly reached out to France about potential support for Hungarian independence. After the bodies were discovered, an elaborate cover-up began. Mary's body was secretly buried without proper examination, while the hunting lodge was demolished and replaced with a convent. The Vatican was persuaded to allow Rudolf, a suicide, to receive Catholic burial by claiming he had been mentally unbalanced. Alternate theories about the deaths abound. Some suggest Rudolf was murdered for his political views, others claim the deaths resulted from a botched abortion attempt for Mary. Some even theorize Rudolf accidentally shot Mary and then killed himself in remorse. Whatever the truth, Rudolf's death dramatically altered European history. With no direct male heir, Franz Joseph's nephew Franz Ferdinand became heir presumptive, the same Franz Ferdinand whose assassination in 1914 triggered World War I. The Mayerling incident remains one of the greatest royal mysteries of modern times. Number 4. The execution of Empress Myeongseong of Korea. How did Japanese assassins infiltrate a queen's bedchamber? On October 8, 1895, Empress Myeongseong of Korea, known as Queen Min, was brutally murdered in her palace by Japanese agents in one of the most shocking royal assassinations of the modern era. The Empress, a powerful political figure who opposed Japanese influence over Korea, was targeted by Japan's minister to Korea, who sent assassins into Gyeongbokgung Palace. The killers, a group of Japanese officers and Korean collaborators, stormed the royal quarters before dawn, stabbing the Empress multiple times and then burning her body in a nearby forest to prevent identification. Emperor Gojong was held prisoner in his palace while the Japanese installed a pro-Japanese government. The international outrage that followed forced the Japanese government to distance itself from the assassination, though evidence clearly pointed to official involvement. The Empress had been working to balance foreign influences in Korea by cultivating relationships with Russia to counter Japanese dominance. Her murder removed a major obstacle to Japanese colonial ambitions in Korea, which was formally annexed in 1910. The assassination became a potent symbol of Korean nationalism and resistance to foreign domination. Remarkably, some of the assassins later published memoirs openly admitting their roles, yet none were ever punished. The Empress's death marked a critical turning point in Korea's loss of independence, with consequences that echo into modern Korean-Japanese relations. Number 3. Thailand's King Ananda Mahidol's bedroom mystery. How does a king shoot himself in the head while lying flat on his back? In June 1946, 20-year-old King Ananda Mahidol of Thailand, Siam, was found dead in his bedroom at the Grand Palace in Bangkok with a gunshot wound to his head. The young king, who had returned to Thailand just 6 months earlier after spending most of his life studying in Switzerland, was lying flat on his back with his Colt pistol nearby. The position of the body made suicide physically implausible, yet that was the explanation initially offered. The king's death triggered a political crisis in Thailand, occurring during a sensitive transition period from absolute monarchy to constitutional democracy. 3 palace aides were eventually executed for the murder in 1955 after highly controversial trials, though many historians doubt their guilt. Alternative theories abound. Some believe it was an accidental self-inflicted wound as the king examined his pistol. Others point to political factions who wanted his more malleable brother Bhumibol on the throne. Still others suggest foreign intelligence agencies played a role. The case remains so sensitive in Thailand that open discussion of it has been restricted under the country's strict lese majeste laws. King Ananda's brother Bhumibol Adulyadej succeeded him and became the world's longest reigning monarch until his death in 2016, never publicly commenting in detail on his brother's death. The mysterious circumstances continue to haunt Thailand's modern history, representing one of the most enigmatic royal deaths of the 20th century. Number 2. The rumored murder of Tsar Paul I of Russia. Is patricide the darkest palace coup? In March 1801, Tsar Paul I of Russia was assassinated in his bedroom in the newly built St. Michael's Castle in St. Petersburg, a fortress-like residence he had constructed specifically to protect himself from conspirators. The 46-year-old emperor, increasingly paranoid and erratic during his 4-year reign, was attacked by a group of drunken officers who struck him with a sword and strangled him with a scarf. Most shocking of all, the conspiracy had the tacit approval of Paul's own son and heir, Alexander. The young Alexander waited in an adjoining room during the murder, having been assured his father would merely be forced to abdicate. When informed of Paul's death, he reportedly collapsed in shock and remorse, but nevertheless ascended the throne as Alexander I. The assassination had been orchestrated by military officers and nobles who resented Paul's eccentric and often brutal policies. He had alienated the aristocracy by restricting their privileges and alienated the military with his admiration for Napoleon Bonaparte. Paul's murder was never officially acknowledged as such. The public announcement claimed he died of an apoplectic stroke. In one of history's great ironies, Paul had spent his reign fearful of meeting the same fate as his father, Peter III, who had also been assassinated in a palace coup, one allegedly orchestrated by Paul's mother, Catherine the Great. The guilt over his complicity in patricide reportedly haunted Alexander I throughout his reign. Number 1. The murder of Tsar Nicholas II and the Romanov family. Was the basement execution the inevitable end of Imperial Russia? In July 1918, Tsar Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia, was murdered alongside his wife Alexandra, their 5 children, and 4 loyal servants in the basement of the Ipatiev house in Yekaterinburg. The family had been held prisoner for months following the Bolshevik Revolution. In the early hours of July 17th, they were awakened, told to dress, and led to a basement room ostensibly for their protection from approaching White Russian forces. Instead, a firing squad entered and executed the entire family. The bodies were taken to an abandoned mine shaft, mutilated with grenades and acid, and buried in a secret location. For decades, Soviet authorities denied the brutal nature of the killings. The location of the remains remained unknown until amateur historians discovered them in 1979, though this discovery was not made public until the fall of the Soviet Union. DNA testing in the 1990s confirmed their identity, and in 2007, the remains of the missing Romanov children were finally discovered. The murder of the Romanovs represents the violent end of the 304-year Romanov dynasty that had ruled Russia since 1613. While Nicholas II had been an ineffective ruler whose policies contributed to the revolution, the killing of his innocent children shocked the world. The execution was ordered by Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin, who feared the Romanovs might become symbols for counter-revolutionary forces. The family has since been canonized as martyrs by the Russian Orthodox Church, and their murder remains a potent symbol of revolutionary violence. Can a crown protect against conspiracy? Or does royal blood make one an even more tantalizing target?